Okay, now that all the parts are built, we want to do the assembly. So we'll go ahead and go and start a new assembly file. Make sure you don't start a weldment assembly. I always like to stay in isometric view when I'm working on things. So I'm going to come up here and place the base component of the train, which of course is the train body. So I'll bring that in. Okay, and when I do that, if you happen to build it laying on its side or standing upright or something, you can come in and you can select rotate around X, Y, or Z, and you might have to do that multiple times to get it in the right orientation. What you do want to do always is ground that first part at the origin. Okay, and then it pops up with another train body. Okay, so that tool is still active. If I wanted to bring in multiple of the same part, I could do that. Well, I don't want to. Next thing we would do, how does that help us? Let's go ahead and bring in the axles and the wheel. Okay, so there's 4 axles, and let's bring in a wheel. Actually 4 wheels. Okay, so most of the train, because all the parts are round, are put together with inserts. That's what we would do. We would insert the axle into the wheel, if we're doing this physically, and then the axle would go into the train body. So I'm going to go up to Constrain, and here's the insert Constrain. And now here's where you need to get good with your mouse and picking things. If you pick like the end of the axle, because it looks like that's what you might want to do, and pick the end of the wheel, well, you inserted it, but all that really does, as you can see, is line up circles. So I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to line up the circles that need to be up against each other. So I'm going to select Insert again. And so this, what circle hits the wheel? That one right there. That hits the wheel on the outside edge. Okay, now you heard that pop. That's a good thing because that means that's going to be successful. So I'm going to go ahead and select Apply to that. Okay, and then we would have kind of the same thing going on with putting that wheel onto the train body. Okay, I can't see the inside of where that hole ends very easily. So what I want to do is I have this up here, this free rotate tool. I can rotate around the wheel, and I know, yes, the axle goes into the hole, but in terms of the assembly, all I really need to do is align with an insert constraint the back of the wheel with the outside of that hole and click Apply. Okay, so that's very simple. Now, we have a little problem with that. If we're trying to be realistic, you can see we just screwed the tire tight to the side of the train body. Okay, so to be a little bit more realistic, let's find where that wheel is. If I point at it, it highlights in the browser. That was my second insert. And I could do this on the fly if I knew what I was doing, but what I want to do is I want to make a 10 thousandths gap on that spacing between the inserts. So we're going to offset that 10 thousandths. So when I do that and you zoom in, you can see now we have a gap big enough to let the tire spin. Okay, so the rest of the train is pretty much put together with inserts. I'm not going to do all the wheels. Let's demonstrate one more with the Cowcatcher. Okay, because it has 3 pegs. So again, we're going to constrain, insert, and again, it's hard to get the inside of the hole. So I'm going to pick the outside hole with the circle on the back side of that peg. And I click Apply. Okay, so now what happens, oops, let's hit Escape. I did a free move now, and then it pops back into place when you start moving it. So we can see that that is up flush against the train body, but it's still rotating. Okay, even though that's physically possible at times, it's still spinning around. Okay, a part before it's constrained has 6 degrees of freedom. It can move in X, Y, and Z axis as a translation. That's 3 degrees of freedom. And it can also rotate around X, rotate around Z, rotate around Y. And that's what happens right now. With that 1 degree of freedom remaining, it's rotating around the Z axis. Now, it's hard to see the parts that are put together, that we need to put together. So I'm going to go ahead and do a free move the Cowcatcher out, okay, and then do a free rotate, and rotate that around, because I need to put at least one more constraint on there so that part quits moving. So I'm going to pick, again, one of those back circles of the peg, and the other one, and click apply, and that should be good. So now when I go to grab it, I get the Ghostbusters can't move it sign. That part is fully constrained. Now, on my tire, once I do that, the wheel still rotates, and in fact, the axle still rotates. So if you're not happy with the axle rotating, is that axle really going to rotate in real life? No, it wouldn't. So it's not going to really affect it any. But if that bothers you, we could put an angle constraint, go 2 angles, and I could pick one of the sides of that hexagon and constrain that with a 0 degree angle to the bottom of the train and click apply. And now that we have that constraint on there, okay, the axle doesn't move, just the tire moves, the wheel. Okay, so I'm going to leave it to you to put the rest of the train together with insert constraints, and then the next video we'll talk about angle constraints and getting it on the track.